You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
What's up, the internet? It's producer Kyle. How's it going? So I'm exhausted. I just want to let you know that's why the eyes are so saggy and the shadows are so heavy. But I told Jen, you know what? As exhausted as I am, I'm going to be here for this. Because the person we're talking to on Talkin Shop today is one of my besties. Like, I love this person more than words can really express. So I want to be here. But none of that matters to you. What matters to you is, are you like me when you watch a horror movie and like the blonde cheerleader girl is getting chased by the guy with the giant knife and you're yelling, "You idiot! Just go the other direction. He can't see you. Just go." If you're like that, my friend who's joining us today works for a company that lets you be that, kinda. And I'll have her tell you about it. This is Talkin Shop. What's up, the internet? As you've noticed, I'm clearly not Miss Jen, which is a thing that happens when I'm here and she's not. So, just to clarify, this is Talkin Shop. Today's guest is one of my favorite people. She's one of the only people on the planet who laughs at my jokes, not because they're funny, but because she knows that I think they're funny. And so I love working with this person. We've worked together before. We've done stuff this is our first for the experience. I want to set this up. The thing we've worked together on, we don't talk about a lot here in the experience, but you're going to hear about it from me more. She works in the tabletop gaming world. So, without me yakking any further, because she's going, "Come on, Kyle, it's a podcast. You got to get to me." Ladies and gentlemen, Julia here.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, pal.
Hi, Fran.
So we should set this up. Julie and I have worked together in the past in some gaming stuff.
Yeah.
And we've done some things, and she's put up with me at Gen Con on an hour and a half sleep and things like that. So, but that's the past. You're with a new company now, a newer company that you've not been with since I worked with you. So tell
new
me
to me. They started the same
right.
time. So I started at Greenbrier Games, and our first Gen Con was AJ at Van Ryder Games' first Gen Con. We were at tables side by side, both showing off our, at the time, brand new shiny zombie games. And each played each other's games and kind of like it had mad respect for each other. And fast forward, it's been years. And I left Greenbrier and he was like, "Hey, you want a job?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. This sounds amazing." And it is. It's amazing. So that's Van Ryder Games. AJ Porfirio is the president. And I am now the Senior Director of Operations. It's a big, fancy title.
It is a big, fancy title. Before we get into big, fancy title and what Senior Director of Operations does, tell people what games they will know from Van Ryder Games so we can put everything into some context.
Well, we do carry a lot of our graphic novel adventures in comic book. So in the comic book world, you might know about the graphic novel adventures that we do, which are, each panel has different numbers of panels to go to. And so you're choosing your own path of what the adventure does, but then there's a scoring system. So we do a lot of Sherlock Holmes ones. So you're trying to figure out who the culprit is for a mystery. And in them, you're reading through as either Sherlock or Watson. If you're Sherlock, it's a little bit harder. Watson's a little bit easier. We give you a little more help. Sherlock steps in and gives you some advice every once in a while. And you're trying to solve the mystery by, so you'll read a panel and it'll say, for more information, or if you want to question this person, go to 12. And you jump to 12. And on 12, that person, you have a series of questions, you can answer them. But if you ask the wrong question, they get annoyed with you or hits too close to home and then they don't want to talk to you anymore, things like that. So it just depends. So we have a ton of those in comic books. And then, of course, our big game is Final Girl, which you alluded to.
That was the game I was referencing.
I know. So Final Girl, Final Girl is, and I saw you in Toledo.
Yeah.
Couple.
We just I got to see Final Girl played for the first time just recently. So
yeah. So Final Girl, like you said, you're playing the Final Girl in a horror movie. All of our films are modular, so you have 2 Final Girls, 1 killer, 1 location. You can mix and match the more films that you acquire, but you start with 1. And like this one here, like that one, because this is the one I designed. So naturally, it's the one I have on hand at all times. But AJ and Evan designed the system. So you are playing cards as your action selection, and you're in a horror movie. And if you like horror movies, you're gonna know the tropes and the films that we're doing homage to for every film. So you're basically trying to, get victims to a safe place, find different items. The items might be an energy drink that'll help you calm down and refocus, which adds to your dice roll, or it might add to your damage if you actually manage to take a whack at the killer. It just depends on what it is. So you're trying to do that. You're running around, but at the end of the day, it's not a hero game. It's a horror game. So you're trying to kill the killer before the killer kills you. And you do that by playing your cards and then rolling dice, because you might make a plan, but you roll the dice because in a horror movie, plans don't actually turn out the way you think they're gonna. Typically, depending on how successful your dice roll is how successful you are in doing the thing you were trying to do. Or so, do you actually manage to sprint away, or do you trip over that tree root and fall on your face and your head on a rock, and then you stand up and you're all dizzy and you don't know what's happening, you're disoriented, and then the killer is upon you, and then they play, and that's all card based too.
I'm option 2. That's what happened for me. Anyway, so there are other games that Van Ryder has done that we'll probably talk about here in a minute. But I want to kind of go back to the beginning. How did you get into gaming? How did you come to be a gamer?
I've always been a gamer. I started playing.
Were you introduced to it like a lot of us in high school, playing D&D, or were your parents gamers?
I was in the 4th grade when I played D&D. Started playing D&D. I'm a big old nerd. I've been a big old nerd my whole life. So yeah, played D&D. I played a lot. My parents were big card players. My grandparents were big card players, and we played a lot at home. So any kind of trick-taking game with a poker deck, I know it. I've played it. My grandmother taught me how to shark it. That's been my whole life. But yeah, yes, role-playing games, specifically D&D. I was in the 4th grade, and that was what the cool nerds were playing. Because,
So, yeah, the cool nerds are still playing it. Like, let's be real. I mean, no matter what you do in gaming, right? Like, no matter what games you're involved with, you're still playing D&D. Like, we meet all these people. We meet all these people who develop their own RPGs, but like, what do you play on Wednesday nights with your buddies? Oh, it's D&D.
Yes, well, and that's true. I am playing a D&D. I play on Wednesday nights typically with my friends. We have a game going. Actually, we're starting up a new one, and I could talk about that, but that's a lot. That's a sidebar. That's you and me sidebar. So yeah,
right.
I started with D&D. I've always played board. I mean, I've always played. I just didn't know you could make money at it until much later in life. So I was teaching and designing educational games because somebody told me. I was in college. I was in my master's program. I wrote a master's thesis about how to incorporate board games into education to improve test scores. That was my master's thesis. And the school system that hired me was like, cool, do it. I was like, what? Nobody reads those. They're like, oh no, we read them. We need you to improve test scores. Start the gaming. And I was like, are you, oh. So yeah, I designed hundreds of educational games before I got into entertainment. And of course, children's games for elementary school, it's all about, math is fun. And immediately that translates to Zepocalypse. I don't know. That's what happened.
We try not to think too hard about the how. We just know that it did.
Right.
So that actually answers my next question. Was going to be, so how did you transition from the ed biz, where you're making educational games, to the entertainment biz, where you're making games where you're legally distinct polar tiny bears running around stabbing each other?
Tales of Barbaria. How do you do that? You get really tired of making flashcard style games, but you learn, like, anybody who wants to design, anybody who wants to write, any kind of creative thing, you do it by doing. So I had done enough. And I will say, the good thing about the public school education system, being a teacher in it, is I had already been, all my darlings had been killed repeatedly, many times, for years. I taught for 12 years before I got into it for entertainment. So that not being precious, and the concept of failing fast, or doing something and having somebody tell you it's wrong or it's bad or fix it or it's not what I'm looking for, and going home and crying about it and being sad or getting defensive, all of that had kind of been burned out of me well before I got into it for just doing it for entertainment. Because you're doing it for in a classroom, like you're doing it as lesson plans, and you don't have time to be precious. You're doing it for this lesson, this module. Now we got to practice for tests, and now we got to, and that didn't work, or the kids were bored. Well, shoot, and kids are the worst critics of, or the best, I guess. Will tell you, this is boring, this is dumb, why are we doing this? You said this was going to be fun, it's stupid. Like they're not going to be gentle with your feelings. So you get over a lot of that. And so when you start doing something just for fun, that concept of failing faster and trying something, and then what's the next thing and what's the next iteration, and that didn't work, so what else will work? You've already got a good basis for it, I think. So that's what happened. Was I asked my opinion on a game, which was early version of Zepocalypse. I gave it. It wasn't kind or gentle. And I got asked by Jeff, who had done the core system, to do it again, and a lot and often. And so that's what started that. And then I realized that doing it for fun, I was burnt out of teaching, which wasn't the kids' fault. That was, our school system is what it is. That's a totally different show. So yeah, I jumped on board, and it took off. And now, being at Van Ryder, I still get to use that a lot, because we have a lot of designers in our company, a lot of creatives. And so my strength is that turning it around and doing the fail faster, and not holding on and being dear or precious about it. So I do a lot more game development at this point, I guess, and still writing. There's plenty of narrative in our thematic games to do, and I get to work with a lot of cool artists, including series 3 of Final Girls coming out, and one of the newest films. Kaylin Smith is is the artist for the one that is about being in a small town up in the mountains where what is happening?
Amanda's closing the curtains, and I'm going, don't close the curtains, I'm on the air.
And you were hoping I wouldn't call it out.
She doesn't listen.
Called it out.
Yes, she doesn't listen.
Solid. So anyway, yes, one of the newest of the films, where you're in a small town up in the mountains somewhere in the Midwest, western part of the United States, and the vibrations in the ground set off a chain reaction of monsters coming up, tunneling through to attack you. Yep. And Kaylin did all the art for that.
I think I've seen this movie.
Ridiculously cool. So
and her art style really lends itself to that Western theme.
yes, and the kind of well, because there's different types of, I mean, in horror movies, there's different types of horror movies. So we want a different artist for this. So you want that's the kind of very tongue-in-cheek, laughing at itself, winking at itself kind of horror, as opposed to some of the ones that are much darker, where we had artists who did a much more surrealist art, darker look to them. So making that's a fun part of working on games, is getting to, and which is a lot of what I do now, is getting to project manage and be like, hey, you are really cool for this piece of this project that we're working on, and matching them up, which is super satisfying when it works out.
So you said your big fancy title earlier, and I think you just answered that question. So what is your role at Van Ryder Games, and like what does that look like in terms of the day-to-day?
So for our company, we're not, there's 8 of us, so we're decent sized, but we're not Walmart. I mean, like it's still a small company.
Right.
And the cool part, like I said, AJ design, we all design. So AJ's baby is Final Girl, and I have had the privilege of getting to design a couple things in it, but that's his project, and it is a behemoth compared to like the other projects. Evan has designed Detective City of Angels and The Dark Quarter, which is coming out, and so he likes big epic involved narrative driven games that are fun to play in his sandbox, but they are time consuming. And then I get the other projects, so the GNAs, I get to project lead on those and make sure that they are, the translations and the graphic layouts and everything like that are working well. Most recently, I worked on the Revenant Society, which is a role-playing game where you are dead, you died, and it's fine. You're fine. It's totally fine. And you're sitting in the waiting room of the afterlife, hanging out, trying to figure out what is going on. Like you were just somewhere doing it's on the tip of your tongue, and your number gets called. You realize that there's a ticketing system, and you're not, and it's like the DMV of the afterlife, and you go to your caseworker, and she's Greta is our NPC, or our non-playable character, is a demon. She's a disgruntled afterlife employee, and she's annoyed that a whole pile of you come up instead of just one at a time, and looks at your paperwork and says, I'm sorry, there's been a problem. There's been a mix-up here. Your deaths are involved around something that shattered the timeline, and you're going to have to go fix it. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting here and forever, because we can't move you forward. I can't push through your paperwork. And there's nobody to deal with it because none of us get paid enough. So you're going to go back and you're going to deal with that, and good luck, and pushes you back into the life of the living. And you are a undead being walking around in your former meat suit that is not as fresh as it used to be, and trying to solve the mystery of your death and whatever it is that you were all tied together. So it is a Powered by the Apocalypse is the gaming system that we use, and it's all narrative driven, where you are trying to, so we have different scenarios. Senfung Lim and Banana Chan designed it, and I have gotten to write a lot of little pieces for it, work with different writers, guest artists. It's been fantastic. So that's my project. That's been my recent baby, which we're just about done with for now. I'm hoping there's more.
I always love that a good adventure starts with admin. Like, this is really just trying to unclog some paperwork here.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Final Girl. We've talked about some of the other games. Give me like a rundown of all the Van Ryder stuff that people should be looking for.
Oh, I mean, I gave you my highlights here. So Final Girl, you should absolutely go find Final Girl. Your local game store should have it. If not, obviously online. Will say that we are the week before This is the week before Thanksgiving, isn't it? Times a tube. This is the week before Thanksgiving, and next week is right after Thanksgiving. There's an event that happens, so maybe if you wait until next week to go to our website, you might want to do that to acquire some Final Girl.
Post Thanksgiving nap is the event.
Yes, that
post Thanksgiving nap is the event.
Sure. So yeah, Final Girl is one of our big sellers, and shoot, it was hilarious. We were in Barnes and Noble now. I saw people send so fall season happened, and I was like, it's Final Girl and pumpkin spice tells you that fall is here, because there were a lot of Final Girl displays for Halloween. True. It was great. And our newest game coming out is Garden Guests, which is on the other end of the spectrum entirely from that. It's super pretty and cute, and much more in the Tales of Barbaria, which you alluded to, of being super pretty. The artist hand cut every single petal and stem and all the beetles, so painted paper, hand cut it, and made mosaics or paper cuts for the art, for every single card, the board. And so you are garden guests, you are beetles trying to cross this flower bed, and it's all hand management, and it's beautiful, and it's mean. It's so mean.
So explain that to people, because you like to make mean games.
Yep, cute and stabby. That's what I do.
But in the community, there are a lot of games that are mean games.
Yeah.
So can you explain to maybe the uninitiated or the people who are playing mean games but don't know they're playing mean games? Pandemic. Tell them what that means.
Well, okay. So narrative-driven games tend to be cooperative. You're working together against the system, the generated AI generated or car generated bad guy, which is a lot of how video games as well, as opposed to a first-person shooter, which is a versus kind of game. So versus kind of tabletop games, you're playing against each other. So if you play cards, you've already played a versus game. If you've played Rummy or like anything like that, your poker, that's a versus game. It's just this is a little bit more targeted of really trying to, and for this particular game, for Garden Guests, you're trying to make a path from one side of the board to the other. It's a hexagon, so it's 2 to 6 players. So whichever side you've picked, the opposite side, you're trying to make a line across, and it's not going to be a straight line. There are little beetles also, because you have to have the right cards to do it, but so is everybody else, which means you're going to be cutting people off left and right to do it. It's meant to be that kind of a thing. So take that game, take somebody else's plans, hopes and dreams, and dashes them. If you can outmaneuver them using cards, using dice, whatever it is that you're using to play them. That's what a take that game is. Ours just happened to be really pretty while you do it.
True. So one other thing that I wanted to kind of talk to you about is, and just kind of get your maybe quick opinion on, and I know you've done some of it, so I'm not expecting too much. One of the best places to find great independent games is on the crowdfunding scene. Yeah. Kickstarter and those kind of things. So is that something that Van Ryder does? And what are your thoughts on that? And what does that mean for the gaming industry?
The gaming industry is very deeply involved in so Final Girl Series 3. So each series has 5 different feature films. And were we to just do that, it would just be the boxes of the films and just sell them, and we would have maybe 5 done at this point. Because of Kickstarter specifically, but also GameFound is where our late pledge is. But the different crowdsourcing, we have up to our 3rd series, so 15 feature films and miniatures and extra vignettes and the ability to write death scenes for every single little victim that you don't have to. You can just roll and, the killer kills a victim and you take the meatball and you put it off the board, or you can open up a book and we've written a death scene for every single victim for any particular case. That's what crowdfunding allows us to do. Now, Garden Guest was not. It was straight to retail, but it's beautiful. It has lovely components, but there wasn't a lot of game sprawl or any way to make, it was pretty, but it was complete, and you can play it as it's an abstract. Even though it's beetles and a flower, you're moving across board. It's strategy, and that's the game. Something narrative where you're going to spend a lot of time writing and adding more art and adding more to it. Kickstarter affords people to be able to do something in a much bigger way. So yes, we do both. And I think it's great that people can do both. I've backed hundreds of Kickstarters at this point, and some of them are tiny, and I'm making 100 of this and I'm done. And I've backed the massive ones because I just wanted every single miniature and piece of art that game had. So I'm a fan. I've been using it, and I'm both somebody who spends a lot of time supporting other companies, but also I've run a number of them. And yes, we can have, plenty of people have concerns or suggestions, complaints. It's a great way for a lot of people to get their creative projects out there that otherwise never, ever, ever would happen. So Final Girl Series 3, we raised almost $2 million. And of that, all of it, so much of it is going towards actually making the game, but then also affording for us to have Jamie, who's new to the company, be hired as our marketing person, and she's amazing. And that's something that we can do because we've been so successful.
Awesome. So VanRyderGames.com, not only is it a place where you can find out news and information about Van Ryder games, but you can buy them if you don't have a local gaming store near you, or you don't have a place to go and get your games. Head over to VanRyderGames.com and check that out. Where can people follow Van Ryder Games on social media, on Insta, on all those places where people can get information?
Yep. So Van Ryder, RYDER Games, on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We just started a TikTok, which again is all Jamie. Are you? Did you see my on going to Indy's Hello Scream Park? Oh my gosh, it was hilarious. Yeah, we're everywhere. We're everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie, for being here. Thank you for being our first official gaming guest. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, and I'm sorry.
All right, guys, we will see you all next time. Comic Collectibles is up next with Rex and John, right here on The Experience. Tune back in next week where Miss Jen will be back, I promise, with 2 more guests. So we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere The Experience is all the time.